Hello and welcome back to another chapter of It Hurts the Hope by Inquilidori on AO3. Chapter 24, The Code That Binds Us Together. Green calls the meeting himself, and while he's quite sure that Mumbo is hovering in the kitchen only to have an excuse to eavesdrop, he thinks he's fine with that. Mumbo would find out eventually anyways. The meeting consists of Green, Pearl, Exuma, and Doc, and they decide to sit in the living room just so Mumbo's eavesdropping is a little harder, and Green finally feels ready to tell them why he's called them here. Does he feel ready? Quite frankly, his wings are shaking a little too hard for that to matter, but he's been thinking a lot about the matter, especially after MCC, and he feels like it's now or never. It's about the code block, he says, and Doc coughs into his fist. Green, we're doing all we can, I promise, but it will still take a while. Let me finish, Green says, holding up his hands. He swallows to try and get rid of the sudden dryness in his throat. I want you to leave it alone. Doc stares. Exuma freezes. Mumbo drops a pan in the kitchen. Pearl flinches with her whole body. What? She asks, and Green winces as he turns to take her hands in his own. I'd like to preface this by saying that I'm very grateful to all of you for putting so much time and effort into the matter, he says, gently squeezing Pearl's hands. I really appreciate it, but I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think it's the right decision. The truth is, he really does. He's scared that if he gets his memories back, he'll become an entirely different person again. He won't be Green the Hermit anymore. He'll be Green the evolutionist hermit watcher, and he's not sure he can handle that. He spent so long on this world with these players, becoming the person he is now. He's terrified that with his old memories, he'll lose sight of who he's become. He'll lose who he is. Anyways, does he really need the memories? He's got Pearl and Jimmy and Martin, in a way. He's relieved he can't remember Evo. That now it's a hazy dream he vaguely knows but can't recall. Because getting his memories back would mean remembering the end of Evo. The fight with the dragon and the Watchers taking him. The Watchers changing him. He definitely doesn't want to remember that. But he doesn't know how to explain this to the players he's sitting with. His admin and sister and close friend. He doesn't know how to say that he doesn't want his past back, because he's more concentrated on the future. I've changed a lot since Evo, he begins quietly, and he finds he doesn't know where to go from there. I'm a lot different now. Green the evolutionist is still here somewhere, but he's faint. Small, occasionally slipping me memories of who I was. But that's not me anymore. I can't go back to who I was because that's not me. And I think I'd rather continue on with this new me instead of chasing after the old one. The silence that follows is deafening. Even Mumbo's pot and pan bashing in the kitchen had fallen silent. Green keeps his eyes down and fidgets with Pearl's hand. Her nails have grown out a little, and there's a small silver ring with a crescent moon on it. He folds and unfolds her fingers, letting them touch her palm before straightening out again. That is perfectly understandable, Exuma finally says, and Green almost melts from the warmth in his voice. We won't make you do anything you aren't absolutely sure about. We'll leave the code block alone, but if you ever change your mind, don't hesitate to ask any of us. Absolutely. Doc agreed with a nod. But, if you ever want to find out more about it, I'd be happy to help. Exuma whacks Doc upside the head. Doc lets out a startled noise eerily similar to a creeper's fuse. Shut up, you mad scientist. He's had enough of your trouble. Exuma scolds him, but they're both laughing. Green finds himself laughing a little as well, but it quickly fades as he turns to Pearl. She's silent, lips pressed together into a thin line, staring down at their intertwined hands. Green realizes with a stab of fear that she hasn't said anything since the initial reveal. Doc coughs and nudges Exuma with his elbow. Let's go tell Mumbo what he already knows because he's been eavesdropping, Doc says, calling the last words in the general direction of the kitchen. No, I haven't, Mumbo calls back faintly, then abruptly goes silent as he realizes what he just said. Doc laughs and leaves the room with Exuma. Green can hear them talking to Mumbo in the other room, but he can't be bothered to really listen in because now he's alone with Pearl and the silence feels like it's choking him. Please say something, Green begs, and Pearl looks up to him with carefully neutral eyes. She breathes out through her nose and presses her lips together even tighter. What do you want me to say? She asks, and she sounds just as lost as Green is. I don't know. That you're okay with it? That you're not mad? That finally makes her poker face crack. Pearl looks shocked for a split second, then sighs and leans forward, bundling him into a hug. Of course I'm not mad, she says, and there's such certainty in her voice that Green immediately believes her. I'm a little confused, I guess. Green slips out of the hug and leans back so he can look her in the eyes. His expression seems to convey the question well enough, because Pearl winces and glances away, picking at a loose thread on her hoodie. I mean, it's just, oh gosh. She drags a hand down her face and finally decides to just spit it out. You don't want to remember us? Oh, and Green gets it. He trills at her and pulls her into a tight hug, wings wrapping around both of them. Of course I do, he says. Of course I do. But I'm remembering you now, aren't I? Look, you're Pearl. You're my sister and the great builder, and you can play guitar and fly, and you're really brave and funny. I don't need to remember all of our old inside jokes or what my old base looked like for us to be family, right? Right, Pearl says immediately. Right, yes. She doesn't sound convinced, though. So Green pulls back again and gently cups her face between his hands, making sure she's looking right at him. I want to move past what they did to me, what I am now. And it'll be a million times easier to do that if I can't remember what was before. Maybe that's selfish of me, I don't know. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to remember you. I do, I just want to make new memories instead of dwelling on the old ones. Pearl touches her hands to his cheeks, mirroring his pose, and gazes at him for a long, long moment. She sighs and leans forward, bumping her forehead against his and closing her eyes. God, you've changed so much, she says, but Green can hear the smile in her voice. So have you, he says, and the phrase is so ridiculous considering the entire earlier conversation that they both burst out laughing. Doc sticks his head in from the hallway. Is the sibling bonding moment over? He asks. Mumbo made pie and Exuma is trying to steal it all. I am not! Exuma shouts from inside the kitchen, and Green laughs, pulling his sister up from the couch and beelining for the hall. "Come on, or there'll be none left for us," he cries, and Pearl's giggles chime with his own. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Green looks away from the mirror and meets Pearl's eyes. She's cleaned up and looks sharper than usual. Her old worn hoodie and faded jeans have been traded for a ruffled shirt and small black pants. She's even gone the extra mile and pinned her hair back from her face. Standing next to her, Green can't help but feel a little more drab. He doesn't really have any fancy clothes, and he practically drowns in all of Mumbo's suit jackets, so he had to cobble something together from his closet. True, the white collared shirt and red sweater vest is a little more posh than what he usually wears, but he still feels like an awkward duck sitting next to a very pretty peacock. Or maybe a crane. Green squints at Pearl and tries to imagine her as a bird. Pearl squints back at him, though there's no way she could tell what he's thinking. Well? Magpie. Green decides, "You'd be a magpie." Pearl blinks. Is that a compliment or... Oh, just a thought. Green shakes his wings out and gives her a dazzling smile. Of course I'm up for this. Why wouldn't I be? I mean... Pearl frowns and fiddles with her sleeves. She seems supremely uncomfortable in the clothes, like she'd much rather be back in her old hoodie and jeans. This will be the first time you've seen them. Technically, you did meet Martin and Jimmy already, but you didn't really talk for long, so... Pearl? Green takes her hands in his own and straightens out her fingers, desperately picking at the edges of her shirt. I want to see them. I want to talk to them. I want to meet my family again. Pearl swallows hard and nods. Her eyes are shining a little too brightly, and Green knows that this is a big evening for them both. He's been missing for years, but in a way, so has Pearl. Okay. Pearl takes a deep breath and smiles back at him. Let's do this, yeah? Yeah. Green reaches up to bump his nose against hers with a small trill, and then drags her towards the door. Bye, Mumbo! He yells over his shoulder. What? Mumbo yells back from his workshop, but Green and Pearl are already out the door. The store they go to isn't one that Green is familiar with, but it's small and homely and has beautiful architecture. Exuma gives them the usual off-world rundown, let him know when they're ready to depart, keep comms active at all times, don't get kidnapped. If you get into any kind of situation, just type code RED and I'll be here in the jiffy. Exuma promises and leaves the two of them alone. Pearl breathes in deeply and then turns to Green and gives him a wavering smile. Ready? Green smiles back and takes her hand. Ready. It takes around 10 minutes for them to find the right place. It would have taken shorter, but Pearl is even worse with directions than Green is, and by the time they find a little restaurant, they're almost late. Martin is outside, leaning against a lamppost and typing on his comm. He shoves it in his pocket when they show up and rushes over to sweep them both into a hug. You made it, he says happily, leaning back to look them both in the eyes. Aw, you didn't have to dress up for little old us, though you look fabulous, gotta say. You said it was a dinner, Pearl protests. We dressed for a dinner. Martin laughs and slings an arm over Green's shoulders, steering them into the restaurant. Don't worry, you look great, and I doubt the others will care. His last words are practically drowned out by a collective shout from the back of the restaurant, where a motley group of people are gathered around a table. Green vaguely recognizes Jimmy, but the others are a blur as they all spring up from their chairs and crowd around the new arrivals, exchanging hugs and happy greetings. Guys! Jimmy shouts, waving his hands to grab everyone's attention. Come on! Don't suffocate them. Let's go sit down and grab some drinks, yeah? There's a scattering of laughter and agreements, and Green can finally breathe again as the evolutionists herd back to the table, picking up fallen chairs and calling over a waiter. He sits down between Pearl and a player he doesn't recognize, a young human man with dark skin and dressed in a blue sweater. Hey, G, the player says with a warm smile, and Pearl leans over on Grian's other side. Grian, this is Bigby, she says, and Grian feels ridiculously happy when he realizes he knows the name, coupled with a faint memories of laughter and friendship. You baked us cookies, he says, and Bigby nods with a joyous grin. That's right, he says, and Grian is indefinitely grateful that he doesn't seem to mind that Grian doesn't remember him. As the evening goes on, Grian starts to realize that none of the evolutionists care that he has no memory of them. They reintroduce themselves with panache. Some make a joke of trying to convince him of more and more outlandish things, and by the night, he feels like they were never apart. Weren't you a police officer? Grian asks at one point, squinting at Martin, and everyone bursts out laughing. I mean, Timmy and I certainly tried. Martin chuckles. I think we were pretty awesome at being policemen, personally. They're lying. They were horrible policemen. Tardis calls out with a smirk, and Martin throws a straw at him. How dare you try and take advantage of G's amnesia? Jimmy accuses, as if he hadn't just tried to convince Grian 20 minutes ago that they had joint custody of a child named Norman. Norman's your cat! Pearl had shouted, and the entire table had spent the next 10 minutes teasing Jimmy for his failed prank. All in all, it's the warmest, funniest evening Grian has been a part of in a while. The evolutionists welcome him back like he was never gone, including him in conversations and explaining inside jokes when he asks. They treat Pearl with a similar kind of warmth, and gently reprimand her for spending so much time away. Okay, I get it, Pearl laughs, holding up her hand to surrender. I'll come back for Christmas, I promise. You too, Jimmy says, pointing a finger at Grian. Don't you go off to your fancy news server and forget about us, yeah? That's an awful rude thing to say to an amnesiac, Timmy, Grian says with a perfectly straight face. And the whole table roars with laughter while Jimmy sputters indignantly. That's not what I meant, he yells, and Nettie pats his shoulder in what she probably means as a comforting gesture, but is offset by her devilish smile. Slowly, the evolutionists take their leave, exchanging hugs and farewells, and departing into the cool evening. Martin and Bigby are last to leave, and Grian gives them both the biggest hug he can. His comm has several new contacts in it. He's overjoyed that they're there. Alright, let's message Exuma and get you back to Hermitcraft, Pearl says with a smile. Grian is about to agree when his comm starts ringing quietly. They both stare at it in surprise, before Grian finally realizes that someone is calling him and he fumbles to pick it up. Hey G, you still at your party? Cleo asks, voice slightly staticky from the cross-world connection. No, we just left. Is something wrong? Oh, no. Quite the opposite, actually. Hypno and Corrales came on World for a night, and there's promising to be a pretty good show. I sent Etho to come get you. Sound good? Yeah, that's fine. Awesome. See you soon. Cleo disconnects, and Pearl and Grian exchange glances in the silence that follows. The, same, the faint sound of conversation floating out of the open door of the restaurant. What show? Pearl asks aloud, and Grian just shrugs. Like hell if he knows. Last week, Joe and Bren put on a 3-hour epic of Shakespearean plays, and Zed set up an automatic tomato thrower. A few days before that, Scar organized a marathon of all the Star Wars movies. It can really be anything when it comes to hermits. I suppose we'll find out, he says cheerfully, and Pearl looks concerned. It's an expression she seems to have a lot when around the hermits. Grian can't imagine why. Void traveling with Etho is different. It's a lot faster than with Exuma, but also feels wrong and too fast. The way Etho smiled at them and snapped his fingers, and then they're gone, but they're not. And Grian can feel the void around them, but it's also with them. And the void embraces them and gently parts around them like the waves on the beach. It feels familiar, almost, but Grian can't put his finger on it. And then there's the warm cadence of home. Grian gasps in a breath of real air, 2 feet planted firmly on solid ground. Pearl stumbles next to him, looking a bit off kilter even with all of her years of experience with void traveling. You okay? Etho asks, standing next to them with his hands in his pockets and looking slightly nervous. I don't usually take people with me when I travel. It can be pretty weird. It's fine, Pearl replies, straightening up and tilting her head at Etho, like a curious bird. I don't think I've ever seen anyone void travel like that. Alright, that's lovely. Glad you're not scrambled or anything. You should go find the spot to sit. I can see Cleo hollering at me. Bye! He's gone in a flash, and Grian looks around at where they landed for the first time. They're standing in a huge empty field, most likely cleared out by a swarm of industrious hermits. There's still double chests sitting on the edge, no doubt filled with wood and other materials. It seems like the entire server showed up, scattered across the edge of the clearing on picnic blankets and foldable chairs. They're chatting excitedly, though Grian can't make out what they're saying, and passing snacks and drinks among each other. It's a bit too dark to really tell faces apart, the barest hint of twilight bleeding into true night. But Grian latches onto Pearl's hand and manages to drag her over to where Scar and Mumbo are sharing a spot. They immediately make room for the new arrivals on the blanket, and Mumbo offers them both a variety of snacks from the basket. What's going on? Grian asks, craning his head to peer around the clearing. It seems like they've gathered here to see something, and Cleo called it a show. So, what's the show about? Hypno and Corellis came to visit for a few days, Mumbo explains, while Scar tries to stop Jelly from getting in the jam. And as always, a challenge popped up, and we never pass up on an opportunity to see the server's magicians duke it out. Magicians? Pearl echoes, eyes wide. Scar laughs and scoops Jelly into his arms. A relative term. Hypno is the only actual mage. X is a void walker. No one really knows what Joe is. And Corellis? I don't think Corellis has ever talked about what he is. But he sure is talented. So when all 4 of them arrange a duel, you know it's gonna be amazing. As Scar explains, Grian continues to look around the clearing. He finally spots the 4 supposed duelists, standing in the field in a square formation. Exuma is easy to make out with his armor, and he spots Joe on the far side of the field, holding what feels like a quill and journal. He also recognizes the young man in the bandana and black cloak as Hypno, who he briefly saw when they went shopping in Ivamere. But the last man average sized, dressed in red flannel with a wide smile, is an enigma. "Is that Corrales?" he asks, and Mumbo hums an affirmative. "Yep, that's him. I'll have to introduce you after they're done. He's really quite wonderful." "Is everyone ready?" Exuma calls out from the clearing, and his voice seems unnaturally loud. "Is that something Voidwalkers can do? Amplifies their voice?" Green's not sure. He'll have to ask him later. "Ready when you are," Corrales calls back. Hypno and Joe give their own affirmations. And Exuma turns to the audience. He pulls off his helmet and sets it aside, and Green can see his giddy smile all the way from the edge. "Give us a countdown, hermits," he shouts. And the hermits are happy to oblige, 20 odd voices rising up as one, in a ringing chant that sends shivers down Green's spine. 5. Hypno cracks his knuckles and shakes out his hands, settling back into a defensive stance. 4. Corrales laughs and bounces on the tips of his toes like he's preparing to take flight. 3. Joe opens his journal and positions the quill on the page. 2. Exuma pulls in a deep breath and closes his eyes when they open again. They're glowing. 1. The countdown reaches its end. Thunder clashes across the clear night sky as it begins. Later, when he asked to describe what it really was, he can't. He simply can't put into words the wonder of that night, the way his breath is stolen from his chest, and his heart skips a beat. Hypno's magic is something almost tangible. It's yellow and silver and pale ice blue. It crackles and bounces and sings, twisting through the air like a snake, crackling like a whip. It's huge and loud and booming. Joe's magic is more subtle. It's the gentle power of words, of a phrase so rightly said that it makes you stop and think about it for a long time. It's the rhyme and reason, then pause between sentences, and the breathless joy of song. It's soft and loud at the same time, gentle and strong and colorful in its joy, spilling from between pages and from a quill that never seems to run out of ink. Corrales' magic is dark. It's shadows and light, trickery and mischief. It lights up the other colors that clash against the sky, and it swallows them up at the same time. It's the comfort of a hug in the dark of the night. It's both there and not, the space between stars and the beauty of silence. Exuma's magic isn't really magic. It's code, in its purest, most tangible form, pulled from the universe itself to spill from his hands and snap through the air. Threads of glowing dark purple, pink, green, blue, the colors of the void and the shades of the world itself. It's less of a duel and more of a dance. 4 distinct signatures, but twining together and clashing against the rising up into the shimmering night sky. Exuma's magic is what is. Corrales' magic is what's not. Joe's magic twists them together, and Hypno's magic sparks it to life. They're equals, and yet they're not. Because how can you put life and death on a scale and expect them to weigh the same. There really is no way to describe it other than magic. Faintly, somewhere in the back of his mind, where he still is himself, Green thinks that he's never seen anything this powerful, this beautiful. Even the Watchers, as old as they are, wouldn't even dream of being able to create something like this. Maybe it lasts 5 minutes. Maybe they're trapped in a single moment, a single heartbeat. Maybe a century or two go by. But somewhere in that heartbeat century moment, the burst of color and void and magic starts to fizzle out, slowly winding back into their vessels. The stars shine a little brighter, the dark seems a little darker, and the hermits are left behind in a silent clearing, not quite sure what they've witnessed. Hypno abruptly sits down in the grass, untying his bandana and running a hair through messy blonde's hair. Exuma picks up his helmet, but doesn't put it back on, eyes dimming back to normal. Joe quietly closes his notebook, now filled from cover to cover with scribbles and shifting ink. Corrales' dark irises seem to fill up too much of his eyes. Someone yells something unintelligible, and the hermits come back to life. The clearing is filled with cheering and yelling as players rush the magicians, congratulating them and offering water and snacks. "You really outdid yourself this time," XB says to Corrales, who laughs and accepts the glass of water, downing the entire thing in one gulp. "Thank you, princess," he replies with a cheeky grin, and they both dissolve into laughter. "What was that at the end? Don't think I've seen that one before," Cleo accuses without any heat, and Joe simply smiles and shakes his head. He pulls his blue-rimmed glasses off and starts polishing them with the corner of his shirt. Cleo just laughs and moves on off to chat with Exuma instead. Green takes this as an opportunity to approach Joe, because he feels that if he doesn't ask the question that's currently burning in his mind, he'll spontaneously combust from not knowing. Joe spots him coming and beckons him over, a gleam in his eye that implies he already knows what Green is going to ask. "Hey, Joe," Green starts, and Joe hums tunelessly, still polishing his glasses. "Howdy, Green." "I'm sorry if this is rude, but what are you?" "Oh, me? I'm perfectly mortal, I assure you." Joe lifts up his glasses and squints through them. Then he puts them back on again. Green blinks. "You're anything but human," he says, and Joe looks surprised for a moment, then laughs. "I said I'm mortal, but not human," he corrects with a soft smile, as if it's a perfectly understandable mistake, and slips away before Green can say anything in reply. Not that Green has anything to say in reply. He chews over the exchange for a moment and finally concludes that he's better off leaving the mystery that is Joe Hills for another time. The hermits don't stay out much longer, departing from their homes with soft farewells and scatterings of laughter. Green notices that the 4 magicians take off rather early. He assumes it's rather draining to summon that kind of a show. And yet, even though it's obviously tiring and hard and complex, they still did it. They still used their valuable magic, time and energy on something that could almost be deemed frivolous. They did it just because they could. Green's not really sure why that bothers him, but he decides to let it rest. It's been a long day. It's late and his brain is working on maybe 1/4 of its usual power right now. Forgive him for having loopy thoughts. When they finally make it home, though, he can't fall asleep. Memories of crackling magic and poetry and a power unexplainable change around in his head, and slumber refuses to come. He can't stop thinking about it. It's amazing, the way they're all so comfortable with their magic, so happy to harness and share it simply for the joy of its beauty. It makes him want to do something. It's an itch in his hands and his mind that he doesn't know how to relieve. It's driving him forward, but he doesn't know where. He finally gives up on sleep and clambers out of his nest, digging through his desk until he finds a stack of paper and pencils. He sits down and simply stares at it for a long time, pencil in hand and blank canvas in front of him. It's terrifying. So clean, so unmarred by graphite or ink, he's almost scared to touch it. Green presses the tip of his pencil against the paper and starts to draw. Admittedly, he doesn't spend too much time on it. He's still tired and still yawning every 5 seconds. Still blinking sleep from his eyes. But it's enough to finally find an outlet for the itch that's been driving him crazy. He sketches and draws and scribbles until he's fighting to keep his eyes open and his head steady. When he's done, he sets the pencil aside and goes to collapse into his nest, wings sprawling out on either side. Green drifts off to sleep and dreams about magic and stars. The sketch of a starter home sits on his desk, rough and basic. It's not much, but it's a start. It's the start of something new, something that shows he's finally moving on. He's pretty sure he's never felt this at ease before. He's never felt further away from the Watchers. He should have known it wouldn't last. And that's the end of chapter 24.